Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. Again, an incredible opportunity, incredible experience. As you noted, Barclays has been just a great partner for Delaware State University over the past decade and really has been a model for what partnerships can be and what they can look like and the impact that is out there for us all when we work together. My journey in getting here, it was quite the interesting one. I'm actually from Dover, Delaware, and I'm from a community called Capitol Green, which is a low-income community. And, for me, it's one of those experiences where when I think about my community in itself, and much like many of the Black and brown communities, they have their own dreams and journeys for the youth that come out of those communities. And I was one of those youth that my community had a dream for because I was an athlete. When I went to FAMU, I didn't have a major. So I went down to Florida A&M. I sent my basketball tapes down and the coach said, thanks, but no thanks. Where's Dover anyway? And so I said, I'm going anyway. So I went down and again, no major. And I was general studies for about 2 years. And it wasn't until I ran into my first economics course and I was actually failing that course. So take the final, go back to Dr. Daniels' office, knock on the door. Dr. Daniels, hello, I'm here to see whether or not I passed the exam. Did I pass your class? And he says, Michael, come in and sit down. And I'm like, oh man, what did I do? Right, what happened? So he sat me down and he commenced to give me the wasted talent speech, right? So he's giving me his wasted talent speech, and then he says, and by the way, what's your major? I'm like, I don't have a major. And he goes, well, what do you like to do? So, well, I'm still waiting on my grade in econ. What do you like? I like economics. and literally this man took that and said, I'm gonna register you now to become an econ major. And to this day, that's why I'm an econ major. In fact, I tell individuals, because you see this also in our communities as well, is that many of our students, first we have first generation, those that haven't been exposed, they will do it for their mentor before they do it for themselves. They don't want to disappoint their mentor. So for me, when people ask, how did I become an economist? I say Dr. Daniels. In fact, I would also say if Dr. Daniels was a chemist, I would have been a chemist. Right? Mm-hmm. Because he's the first one that really, instilled in me a belief that, listen, you can pretty much be whatever you want. And so a lot of times that's what these students need. And when they understand that they have someone in their corner, they want to do it for them. They don't want to disappoint that mentor, that one who's pouring into them, until it gets to a point where it becomes habit. And now they're just progressing and doing great things and don't even realize that this habit has been formed as a result of their work ethic and their willingness not to want to disappoint their mentor. So long story short, that's how I became an economist. When we think about the definition itself, I like to think about a phrase that I'm sure we're all familiar with, and that is a rising tide lifts all boats. You heard that before? Well, there ain't many boats in the distressed communities, in the most hardest hit communities. So the rising tide is not lifting many of our communities. And what does that reflect about? When we see, Wall Street, we see productivity increasing and GDP increasing, but our most distressed communities are not moving, they're still staying stagnant, and we see the wealth gap happens, right? That's the difference, as I would say in economics, that's the difference between economic growth and economic development. Because economic development is thinking about social economic development. What do we need to do to create better lives and well-beings for all communities? And so when we have that disparity there, that means there's a lot more work to do in order to put in policy interventions, training, education to assure that all can benefit. We've really taken on this mission to really leverage the expertise and resources and partnerships such as Barclays to really bring about economic development and change in our communities and bring awareness too. That's very important. So one such project is a project we call CURE, which is our Center for Urban Revitalization and Entrepreneurship. And CURE is a business incubator, much like many that you see, much like the mill here, but it has a very different focus and target. The mills of the world, the WeWorks of the world, they presuppose certain assets and resources that these entrepreneurs are coming to the table already with. But when we think about CURE is being placed in one of the most distressed communities in the state of Delaware. It's in the Opportunity Zone in Dover. And so the question for us with CURE is we have to both train the entrepreneurs and expose them to opportunities and awareness. We also have to train the communities that are supporting them as well. right? To ensure that community members and entrepreneurs understand the cycle of impact that happens. When I support a business in my community, how that support should be then translated or moved back into the community, whether or not that business owner provides a scholarship or supports the local schools. That cycle of events has to happen. I think many times in our minority communities, we're pretty hard on our businesses, right? So when you think about that psychology, we got to think about, one, how we break that down, and two, how do we, again, train the community leaders on how to best support entrepreneurship and business development. A lot has changed, but I will say this, there's a lot of excitement too, because we just started school about 2 weeks ago. And for the past 2 years, as you would imagine, it's literally been kind of a ghost town. It's like I Am Legend walking on campus. And so the first day of class, I was walking in, I parked my car, and a colleague was coming up, and all these students were walking. Then we opened up the doors, all these students moving around, and we was just refreshed and energized. It's something to be said about the energy of the presence of people together, right? At that same time, and to your point, we also found that, this technology that's out here can really help leverage what we're doing and make it much more impactful. But when we think about that hybrid model and the education that's needed on both sides, so our students understanding, like, what does a virtual interview look like, and what does your background need to be, and what's virtual etiquette, and all these things are very important in our learning process now as we change curriculum and think about different professional development strategies. But one thing that we did realize is that, again, that hybrid approach, that's impact. And no better example of that is our annual Deep Day, our Delaware Executive Exchange program, which Barclay is an incredible sponsor. You guys you've launched that Deep Day into another stratosphere because your sponsorship of the case competition, we are like the buzz of the town now. So thank you again. But for that hybrid, for the Deep Day prior to COVID, we would average about 400 students, 300 to 400 students that would come into the College of Business building. And we would actually, perform, do all the mock interviews and networking and all these type of things that, again, all of our students need. But what we realized is that when we went into the pandemic and we had to go hybrid, we had over 1,000 students, or close to 850 students in attendance on the hybrid model. And so we said, hold on, we have something here, right? We're not confined to the constraints or to the limits of our physical space, right? So with that, we said, okay, how do we best manage this? And so the following year, last year, we were actually the hybrid. We had close to 1,000 students that year. Again, teaching them now both professional development from the virtual perspective as well as in-person opportunities such as this. So again, change the whole dynamics around professional development, curriculum development. And again, I think we're well positioned to continue on that pathway. The idea was really growing prior to the pandemic. So around 2019, we were really talking about, how do we, again, leverage our resources, leverage our talent and network to really make positive change in the communities that we serve and those global communities as well. But much like many other, HBCUs and many other organizations for that matter, sometimes it's not about the talent that is there or the resources, it's about the deployment of those resources and those talents, right? We now point much of our resources, much of our expertise in this area, and that cuts across disciplines, it cuts across industries. Whether that's, again, as we talked about poverty itself and how do we leverage our resources for the mitigation of poverty. Or for instance, we have a water lab on campus and we all understand some of the challenges that are happening with water in our most distressed communities. How do we now take that water lab that's been in existence and redirect it to ensure that it's outward thinking and outward reaching and really addressing some of the challenges that are faced. And we're taking our researchers and our experts and our partners, we're taking them with us to solve those type of challenges. One, of course, I think about athletics. I told you it's kind of my story, right? But then when I think about, I went to UConn, right? So UConn, there used to be a bumper sticker when I was up there. This was before the men actually won the championship. It said at UConn where men are men and women are champions, right? So, right? So, when I think about just the impact of athletics on just the creation of family and, bringing everyone together as we build athletics, as we build those individuals such as yourselves that are now honorary Hornets, right? When you come and you cheer us on, again, that's all through these type of experiences. One of the things we talk about in the College of Business is that 80% of a student's time is spent outside of the classroom, 80%, right? So when we think about that, we really have to be mindful and intentional about how we create infrastructure programming that really engage our students on so many levels, right? So we have a lot of co-curricular programming, but we also have a lot of great outlets, and athletics is right at the top of that. I was looking forward to last week coming up here and having chicken for dinner, but we lost that game. But at the end of the day, it was a great opportunity for the alums and fans of Delaware State and those of University of Delaware as well to come together. I think it's also opportunity for communities to come together. I think having the game now brings us closer together as two institutions within the state. And I think with that, it's symbolic or be emblematic of the many partnerships that we have with University of Delaware, or Wilmington University, or Del Tech, which are all very important to us. And again, right at the heart of that is athletics, because that brings us all together. Montes have been an incredible partner. I mean, like I said, it's been over a decade. I recall being a faculty member in a business school, and I recall our students being shipped up here for internship and mentorships that was happening. Again, I think, it's a model here. You guys are a model here. And so if anything, I would say, I think there's an opportunity, as we were just speaking, right? There's an opportunity for us to be more intentional around the design so we can sit down and really think about, our strengths that we have and our missions. How do we collectively advance our mission and leveraging our strengths at the same time, and kind of outline some deliverables and some outcomes, as it pertains to recruitment of our students and or engagement with minority businesses. I think that's an opportunity there. But I mean, I think we have the components already. We went through some of the components or samples that we know we can look back on and say, this worked, that worked, that worked. Now, collectively, if we integrate them all, will have an even larger impact. And I think that's where we're at right now with Barclays and our partnership. And I'm looking forward to sitting down and designing and really being intentional around what the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years looks like for our partnership.